Welcome into a Monday, February 16th edition of Daily Faceoff Live, streaming live on the DFO YouTube, and as always, a presentation of Bet365. Download the app today. Use the promo code NATION. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Tyler Yaremchuk, Carter Hutton. We're kind of got the outfits synced up, both rocking a little light green today for some reason.
Yeah, I don't know. It's family day here in Ontario, so we got the day off. We're rocking the green. The weather's unbelievable here. Olympics are on. I don't know. Things are good here, buddy. I can't complain.
Yeah, it's been great. A little Olympic curling this morning as well. I've been glued to Mark Kennedy and that Canadian rink, Brad Jacobs rink. They've been electric. Everything's been awesome so far at the Olympics. Canada coming off their first gold the other day. Mikhail Kingsbury, the flag bearer, delivering Canada their first gold medal. So everything's been good on the Winter Games front, and everything's been good for Canada on the men's ice hockey front as well, as it was a dominant finish to the preliminary round for the Canadians. We'll talk a little bit about Macklin Celebrini in a few moments, but a couple of headlines coming out of that 10-2 drowning in over France. Let's start with Tom Wilson. I mean, it's weird that in a game with 10 goals, we're going to talk about the one fight. It's rare that you get a Gordie Howe hat trick in the Winter Games, Huts. But what did you make of? And there's a couple different ways to go with this, not just Tom Wilson's fight, because I think you could kind of tell he wanted to go out there and stick up for his teammates. But I thought Nathan MacKinnon kind of lost his cool a little bit. He was running around trying to hit guys at the end. What did you make of the way that game kind of, got heated at the end?
I can't say I loved it, right? Kind of for what it's worth. I feel like when we talk about the Winter Games and what's been going on in men's hockey, this is different than tick for tat, right? You hit our guys, and this is a game where it's a drubbing, right? And I understand you don't want to see Nathan MacKinnon get hit high. When the actual play happened, I'm thinking to myself, this is a good moment for a player like Sidney Crosby or Connor McDavid to talk to MacKinnon, to be because they know we know Nate Dogg can get his wires crossed, right? He starts running around, and the last thing you need is for him to get hurt or to take a penalty or anything along those lines in a tournament like this where you're building up for something better. And again, I get the fact that you need to defend your player, and Tom Wilson goes out there and does that. And I think it was a situation where I don't think Wilson was necessarily trying to fight. As you can tell, the player got the upper hand on him immediately. He was just trying to set that tone. But that being said, there's so much more important fish to fry in this tournament, right? You want to be healthy. You want to be ready to go. So I just don't think that really plays an element. When you get into a medal game or the finals and then you need that element, that's different. But a penalty here or there could really hurt you.
I think it could go one of two ways. Yesterday on our post-game show, by the way, we're live immediately following every single Canadian game out in Milan. Jeff Merritt kind of brought up the point, and I agreed with him. Could this be a chance for John Cooper to, all right, sit everybody down, say, you guys got it out of your system. It's done. We're in the medal round now. No more screwing around like that. You wanted to run around. You wanted to send a message. Sure, you got your wires crossed. All right. Can it be a positive lesson for this Canadian team that hey, we wanted to do it. Now everybody knows we'll stick up for each other. When the games mean a little bit more and I'll say start to matter, you can't be running around like that. I think there's a chance it goes that way. There is a chance it also goes the other way where did Tom Wilson just sit there? Again, no suspension for him. He's good to go in the quarterfinals on Wednesday. Is Tom Wilson going to sit there and say, well, I kind of got away with it? Not that he's going to go out there and fight because he knows he'll get kicked out, but is he going to sit there if Canada's up 5-0 on Czechia in the quarterfinals? Is he going to go start running around getting under guys' skin because that's the way his brain is wired? And he'll go, hey, I got away with it once, I'll probably get away with it again. It could go one of two ways.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's where the maturity and leadership of this group, right? You talk about the amount of rings and championships that have been won in that room. Staying in the moment and staying present, I think, is going to be priority number one with this team. But also knowing that you need to step on the gas, because I also feel like if we do get that matchup, it looks like it would be USA-Canada final if they are to meet and they can play a heavy game and you have the Chucks running around. Tom Wilson, hey, the leash is off. Let's go set the tone. We're going to match them shot for shot and kind of where we need to play. But the game is going to be won by who can score goals and who can create speed, and Canada has that. So I think the maturity in this room will take over. But Canada, needs to flex a little bit. They're not going to be pushed around no matter who they play as well.
So a 10-2 win for Canada, all it essentially did lock up their top spot. So they're the number one seed heading into the quarterfinals. The U.S. beat Germany, which locked them in as the number 2 seed, which means the only way that these two teams can meet is in a potential gold medal game. What that also means, because of the wrench that Slovakia threw into everything by winning their group, It also means that Sweden and USA are on a bit of a collision course for the quarterfinals, a matchup that I think a lot of people thought would come in maybe the semis. It comes around earlier. The US coming out of a group where they really weren't pushed all that much. Like Canada getting the top seed, massive because their path, and we'll talk about it maybe a bit more in a few minutes, their path seems pretty simple to get to the gold medal game. The US now is going to have to clear a big hurdle on Wednesday.
Yeah, and this goes one of two ways too, right? The way I view it is in the sense of like, you think about the NHL playoffs, right? And you think about a team that's clinched and they're in first place, and then all of a sudden you're the Boston Bruins and you've won the President's Trophy and you've set records all year, but then you meet a Florida Panthers team who's been playing desperate playoff hockey for so long. So it can go one way or the other here. I think you have to keep your group dialed in and playing the right way, because if you do get a couple easier matchups and maybe you let off the gas a little bit, this is a one-game showdown, right? Like it's a goal here or there. A goalie plays really well. Your performance pushes. So when I look at some of those teams, and Sweden is the one that stands out for me. They haven't played up to par, I think, in their first 3 games. But now they get an extra game against Latvia, and maybe that tightens the group up a little bit. And then next thing you know, they're peaking at the right times and rolling, where trying to just find your game when you haven't really been in challenging situations can be a lot harder at times. So it's going to be challenging for both teams, right? I think this is the fun of this tournament. And you touched on it a lot before we started. With this goal differential and one little game upset here or there, the quarterfinals, which we thought we would see, are out the window. And now you're getting different matchups. And that goal differential really came into play for Canada to get that top seed.
We're going to talk more about Team USA when Steve Peters joins us. He's our guest today, coming up in about 8-9 minutes time here. But let's circle back to one big story. And one of the more surprising stories coming out of this preliminary round is just how goddamn good Macklin Celebrini looks. And listen, I'm not going to sit here and call this a coming out party for Celebrini or anything like that, because, I mean, on this show, on every show I've been on, I've said that, like, this guy's MVP case was strong. The numbers with him on and off the ice for the San Jose Sharks, I think, again, the kind of East Coast, West Coast thing where a lot of media maybe aren't staying up and watching Macklin Celebrini games as often as they should. Like, his MVP case was understated coming into the Olympics. And I know these games don't mean anything for NHL awards, but on a narrative-driven award like the Hart Trophy, you better believe Macklin Celebrini is going to be right there with Connor McDavid and Nathan MacKinnon the rest of the way. So all of that saying, he had and was having an amazing season. The fact that he's come to the Olympics and continued this level of play, Huts, Canada's taken a group that won the Four Nations last year and looked really damn good in doing so, and they added another MVP caliber player to this forward group. Like, that impact and how important he's been to this group, it now can't be understated.
No, it can't be, right? And again, the fact, you look at his standings, the statistics for the San Jose Sharks, he's got 55 games played and 81 points. The next guy down is Will Smith at 39 points, right? And this is something we've touched on a lot, and it doesn't get the credit it deserves because of the fact of where he's at. And this is a kid, it's not just the skill set of these younger players, it's between the ears for me to be put into this moment and to just excel and be so good. And a little thing that I grabbed here today is his USHL debut in 2022. He scored in his first game. In his NCAA debut, scored in his first game. In the NHL, and now in the Olympics. Like, in those, and each time you're taking a step up, everybody's a little bit better, and you have to make adjustments. You have to get there. I think it just goes to show you his mental capacity to be in moments and not be overwhelmed is so impressive for a younger player. The future looks bright, and there's a plethora of younger Canadian players that are going to fill these spots as we move forward in these international events. But Macklin Celebrini is the name that's going to stay around in Hockey Canada for a long time.
Oh, yeah, that little graphic that you grabbed, that shows the moment's never too big. Like, this is not a kid who's, gonna, be crumbling mentally or anything like that. He goes, takes the penalty shot. I know he didn't know that there was the rule that they could send anybody. He said after the game that if he would have known that John Cooper could have picked anyone on the bench, Celebrini said, I would have gone off and told Connor to go shoot it. But John Cooper kind of said, no second thoughts at all. Everyone wanted to see the kid in his penalty shot, and he goes and cashes in there. And I even think, like, the broadcast did this in the intermissions. There was a couple of moments where he's doing the beaver taps and calling for pucks from Connor McDavid. Like, this is not a guy who's just all shy, sitting there going, oh, I don't want to disrupt Connor McDavid. He's taken that spot on the top line, and he's absolutely grabbed it and looked like he belonged, and it looks like he belongs. And what that also does is it shuffles a bunch of other things throughout this Canadian lineup. We can look at the lines, which, again, are available on dailyfaceoff.com, your number one site for line combinations. But the way it shuffles everything else out, we're not screwing around with, like, can Hagel fit with McDavid? Are we putting Marner up there? Like, no. everything slots perfectly because this top line has been as advertised.
Yeah, and I think circling back to what you said about Celebrini calling for pucks and being aggressive and just like having that dominance to go in there and assert himself, and I think that is trusting your teammates. And he got to play at the World Championships with some of these guys, and he's kind of built that rapport where I see the one guy a little bit hesitant at times is Nick Suzuki. I know he's playing on the wing, and then almost at times trying to force pucks into players, into McKinnon, make that play, almost trying to always feed him at times where you got to take what's there. You're one of the best players in the world. And I think that evens this lineup out. And another player for me who's been just a real treat to watch in this, and they've highlighted him a bunch, is Mark Stone. Like, Mark Stone's intelligence and hockey IQ is world class out there. For a guy who can't get around the rink like we see some of these other players that are the high end in the world, he has done a really good job of evening out this lineup. He's always in space. He's got a great stick, and he does a lot of things that pushes Canada over the top, but then gives perimeter players more time to skate and make plays while he eats up big minutes in tough areas.
All right, let's park the Canada, let's park the USA conversation for a little bit and do some fill in the blank, looking at the rest of this men's tournament. The first one I got for you, Huts, the team that has surprised you the most through the preliminary round is blank.
Slovakia. Slovakia is the team for me that I don't think I really had them on my radar to do what they've been able to do, right? They have a few big names and some guys that can play, but I think this has been an inspired group over there, and they've been able to get it from all areas. Goaltending's been good. Yurov Slafkovsky has been unbelievable. I think this is an exciting time for a country like this. You know, they've made noise before in international tournaments, but this was a team I didn't see coming, Ty.
Yeah, I think they've been great. Obviously, Juraj Slafkovsky, that tremendous opening game. It gave them that big win over Finland, and the trickle-down effect as it went through sort of the rest of the preliminary round led us to, again, if Slafkovsky doesn't have that opening game performance, we probably aren't talking about a Sweden-USA quarterfinal. That's the kind of wrench they threw into the plans in Milan. But Slafkovsky's been unbelievable. The one team that has surprised me just in terms of how they played was Switzerland. Very fast up-tempo. Obviously, losing Kevin Fiala sucks, and I know we have an inbox question about that in a little bit here. Losing Fiala sucks, but they just play so much faster and more offensively minded than I thought they would, than Team Switzerland traditionally does. When you think about them over the last 10, 15 years, it's like, all right, button it down, get a good goaltending performance, and win 2-1. Hasn't been the case at all for Switzerland through the preliminary round. So they're interesting because they get a matchup against Italy that they should be able to breeze through. And then they actually get Finland in the quarterfinal. And like, hey, I'm not going to give Switzerland a 0% chance of beating Finland. So I think they got a chance there. I love that you brought up Slovakia, because you look at the way the bracket's going for them. In all likelihood, Slovakia is getting Germany in the quarterfinals, which means one of these two non-traditional powerhouses. I know Slovakia had their run, 10, 15 years ago. They were much better than they are now. But one of Slovakia or Germany are likely going to be in the semifinals. So that's pretty cool to think about.
It is pretty cool too, and based on the seeding, right? If USA were to win, they would end up getting Slovakia if they win. But then if Germany wins and Finland wins, you could get a Germany versus Canada matchup. So the reseeding into the semifinal will be very interesting to watch. And what I do enjoy about the tournament as well is the fact that everybody gets a seat at the table here, right? So you do get a chance to play in elimination games. All these teams that are in there in that second little quarterfinal to play in, I think is awesome, right? I think it's very exciting. You drop a few teams. France is gone. But like for Italy, just to get to play in this game and have an elimination game is unbelievable. The Swiss is a dangerous team, right? The Finns, I feel like they found their game as the tournament's gone on. But for Finland, Jussi Saros has been the star of the show, in my personal opinion. He is going to have to be very good because the Swiss know how to play as a unit. I think that's going to be an important factor if we see that matchup in the quarterfinals here. Because Saros has been a guy that needed this tournament, in my personal opinion, because I don't think in Nashville the last few seasons it's gone up to his standard. And again, you're a product of your surroundings. But he's been a great story leading up to this tournament. We knew he's going to have to be good if they wanted to have a stand a chance in this.
Yeah, I think tomorrow we'll dig into like an MVP sort of conversation for all the teams that have clinched buys to the quarterfinal. And I mean, Finland's probably one of the easier teams to do it for because that guy, Jussi Saros, has been unbelievable. Just quickly on the seeding and the way things work, Pat, if you want to flash back up the bracket we had there. So Canada's going to get the winner of Czechia, Denmark. Finland gets the winner of Switzerland, Italy. Slovakia gets the winner of Germany, France. USA gets the winner of Sweden and Latvia. There is no reseeding coming out of that qualifying round. So we know exactly the way the bracket goes. But coming out of the quarterfinals, there is a reseed, which again puts some emphasis on how important it was for Team Canada to grab that top seed. Because let's say we get to the quarterfinals and all the favorites win 1, 2, 3, and 4. You would get USA, Slovakia in a semi, because again, you reseed to 2 and 3. Canada gets the lowest available seed. That would be Finland. But again, to bring it back to that Germany point, Leon Draisaitl could do maybe a nice solid favor for his boy Connor McDavid. If Germany were to go beat Slovakia, or Sweden were to potentially beat USA, which is another crazy wrinkle in all of this, Huts. If Sweden beats USA, they're the lowest seed, which means semifinal is Canada-Sweden. Again, you're in a way, if you're Canada, almost rooting for USA to get past Sweden so that your semifinal matchup can be easier. And not that if you're Canada, you're not scared of anybody. That's not what I'm trying to say. But like, if you want to map out the easiest possible path and you're Canada, you're rooting for a USA win over Sweden and probably a Germany win over Slovakia so that whoever wins USA Sweden ends up getting Finland. It's very confusing, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, I was just trying to write that down here so I can keep track of it. But this is the way it goes, right? This is the excitement of the tournament. And I guess as a fan of this too, we get to play out different scenarios of who is going to meet who and who is going to play. And like we talked about earlier, and I think that is going to be a big factor. It's like, you got to, if you want to win, you got to beat the best, right? So I think at times, if you get a challenge, my worry of this whole tournament, as I look at Canada, is like you started with Czechia, then you went down to a Swiss game, which was easy. Then you had a France game, right? Where now you got to start revving that back up, or maybe getting an early matchup for the United States where they got to play Sweden and then potentially Slovakia or Finland. And then you're revving right up and peaking your game, because it's going to be a challenge either way to find it. And I think at most of these teams, the answers are within their room to play their style of play. But if you get a good matchup, anything can happen in one game.
Yeah. All right. Let's keep cruising along. Continue this conversation with our guy, Steve Peters from Inside the Coaches Room. Love that music, the little Euro beat, as we welcome in our friend Steve Peters. Petey, obviously we can't do any film breakdown because of the IOC, and I've been loving your breakdowns on your Twitter with the little figure. Still finding ways to give us analysis. I'll start with Team USA with you. Through 3 games, that was a group where they didn't really have a big tough test at any point. But how did you think USA looked through 3 games?
This is Team USA has had a different path than Team Canada. Team Canada has dominated from the drop of the puck until we get ready for the next round. Team USA struggled, and you know what? They've been behind in 2 of their 3 first periods, and something that Canada hasn't happened to them in the entire tournament. USA's had some adversity. Now it's self-inflicted adversity. I don't think they've been able to come out and have good first period starts. I thought they were much better against Germany, but USA is getting better as the tournament goes on. I think Canada has been dominant from the beginning. USA is building up, and which is better? Honestly, I don't know. That's what's so difficult about this tournament, because neither of these teams, and USA just hasn't been. They haven't been tested, and they haven't had the big 60 minutes of, hey, everybody's got to play well. We've got to defend well. We've got to have great goaltending. And we've seen this tournament. I think their biggest test is going to be in the next round. I do think this Sweden matchup potentially frightening, because I said going in, Sweden is the 3rd best team in this tournament. So USA is ramping up and potentially ramping up at the exact right time.
Yeah, something we touched on earlier. We were kind of doing a pre-show talk, and I don't know where I would find the numbers, but I remember my record in the NHL, like when I was 35 shots or more, like how much better I would play, right? It's a big adjustment. I think we're seeing that with lots of guys. When you're not busy, it's hard to stay in it mentally, and that's a challenge now. And again, as you assess this tournament, PD, and you look at, what teams are doing what, who are you surprised by that you never really thought? Like, who's someone that stands out to you that you think have had a great Olympics here?
Yeah, well, you look at players, and you brought it up, like the teams you guys hit, the teams with Slovakia, I think, had a really good tournament. The Swiss can be dangerous for players. It's you're always looking for that star of the Olympic. Like, hey, this is a guy, and the talk, Huts. It's going to be, oh, he should be in the NHL. I'm telling you, every time there's a big national tournament like this, somebody steps up and is like, oh my gosh, this guy's not in the NHL. He should be. And for me, it was that Clara kid, that goaltender for was that Italy, and he's 6'8" or whatever the hell he is, stops 50 pucks. But again, you got to go back and look at the underlying numbers. How has this player played through his career? How has this player played leading up to the Olympics? Because if you're facing a team like Canada, US, or the Swedes or the Finns that are so much better, there's no pressure, there's no stress, there's just go out and play. And I think for a goaltender, and you can attest to this, for a goaltender with nothing to lose, just go kick it. And if I give up 1 or 5, like Claire gave up 5 that game, but he was still the best player in the game. So I do want people to temper their opinions in the Olympics over that 2-week span of, hey, this player or that player was really, really good, we should see him in the NHL, because 2 weeks of running on high and adrenaline can be different than what you're going to be able to do for the remainder of your career.
So I want to again zero back in on Canada and USA, and maybe again this is probably falls into the category of nitpicking, but like let's try to poke some holes in these rosters. My thing for Canada through their first 3 games has been some of their blue liners have struggled to move the puck. Is that a fair critique, or has Canada just been perfect?
It is, because you're trying to find something. The one thing that Canada has that I don't think any other team in this tournament has, their ability to roll 4 lines that have a scoring threat on all 4 lines. And USA didn't build their team that way. I think USA is a top 6, bottom 6. And I think they're prepared to defend and kill penalties and maybe provide a little bit of grit. What surprised me with Canada is they've been the most physical team in the tournament. And I don't know if I was anticipating. I know you have Tom Wilson in the lineup, and you anticipate he's going to throw the body around. That's why he's there for the Tkachuk factor come the gold medal game potentially. But it's their ability to score with. It doesn't matter. It's roll the next line. You watch him play France, and it's Celebrini McDavid buzzing up and down the ice, and you go, okay, we're going to get a breather. Nope, because guess up next? It's McKinnon and Hagel. We're coming at you. Oh, you get a break? No, Crosby, Marner, Stone are coming. So I think with Canada, their ability to play with high pace with whoever you throw on the ice has given them a big advantage. But when we talk about their ability to get the puck up the ice, I had to go back to the 4 nations, because I don't think Canada's defense have been tested. I don't think they've been tested defensively, where they've had to have sustained pressure for over a minute in their defensive zone. So we don't know how they're going to defend. And sometimes it's too easy for them to get out of the zone. There is no forecheck pressure. There is nobody coming at them. And we've seen them turn the puck over under limited pressure, because sometimes you're looking for that long bomb. You're looking for the big stretch play. You get 3 forwards flying the zone and you're trying to make a big offensive play. And I know that's going to work through this preliminary round, but when you get into the medal round, it's going to be different. The forecheck's going to be much more heavy, whether it's Sweden or the U.S. or whoever's coming in against Canada. They're going to have to move the puck quicker than they have. I really do. I think they've been looking for the perfect play. I think they need to look for the quick play. They just haven't had to yet.
Yeah. So again, the kind of critique of Canada's roster coming in was Chychrun, Bouchard, Schaefer. Would one of those puck movers have been better suited on this team than one of the guys they did take? And I think through 3 games, no one's going to complain about a 3-0 start and how good Canada's looked. They clearly look like the best team, but I think those people maybe do have a little bit of a point here. But on the U.S. side, I was on with Colby and Johnny earlier today, and I caught the tail end of them talking about how through 3 games, the Jason Robertson thing is still looking like a big miss. From what you've seen on this USA team, do you still think they could have benefited from a Robertson, and I'll throw Caulfield in there as well, or has the forward group maybe not been an issue?
It's been a different offensive group for USA than Canada. We talk about Canada's speed and balance. Team USA hasn't had that dynamic, we're going to roll lines and everybody's going to put pressure on. I think you've seen the Matthews line do it. And Gensel, I thought Gensel was outstanding yesterday. He had more scoring chances from the slot area, just unable to score. And that Eichel-Kachuk line has also been outstanding. And then it's everybody else. And I don't want to say that as a slight, because Brock Nelson has had a great tournament. Jack Hughes has showed glimpses, Tage Thompson on the power play. But I do worry about this team. And let's face it, this whole tournament is all built about USA versus Canada. That's how both teams are trying to beat that opponent. I'm not sure USA can outscore Canada. I'm not sure if this gets to be USA needs to absolutely get a goal. Man, you'd sure like to have some of those offensive guys that just seem to find the net. And Jason Robertson and Cole Caulfield are those type of players. They're leading all Americans in the NHL in points. So you got to, or at goals, and you got to look at those guys when you absolutely need a goal. Who you throwing over? I know Austin Matthews is starting to put up numbers now, but the Americans don't have that dominant forward that Canada has. When you talk about, hey, we need one. It's McKinnon, it's McDavid, it's Celebrini. They don't have one, they have 3. And you could even go deeper on that team. So I do worry about the Americans' ability to score and outscore Canada. Can they make this a 2-1 game against Canada or a 3-2 game? Yeah, I think that's how they're going to have to win. Again, if they get there. I'm very, very concerned from a Team USA standpoint against the Swedes, who, if they get good goaltending and can finally play to what their expectations are, man, that Swedish team can be very good. They just haven't been leading up to this game in the tournament.
Yeah, I think that's the worrisome for a lot of teams, right? You can talk about that with Team USA. I think you can talk about Team Canada, like even Jordan Binnington. He hasn't really been challenged in a sense, right? Now, all of a sudden, you're going to have to crank that up. It's going to be there. Now, when you talk about Canada's superstar players, right, which are big-time game breakers, and we've seen that nuclear line now, right? We've seen McDavid, McKinnon, and Celebrini. If you're inside a coaching room and where you're at, like, how soon do you go to that line in a game, right? Because I felt like it was earlier at times because they're trying to score, but now you're playing in the elimination rounds. Do you think that's something we go to earlier? Because it's not like your second line's going to be any worse. You still have a ton of talent and depth.
Yeah, the one thing I do expect from both of these two top teams is their elimination of that 13th forward getting a regular shift all the time. I think it's been really difficult to rotate that 13th forward in on both teams. You see lines that can't get that consistent chemistry because it's always throwing a third player in with that mix. So I think that will start to diminish. So you'll see a player like Sweden did in the opening game where you're sitting a player, which still, again, shocks me. I do think you're going to see more of that. And you're right. Canada hasn't had to do that yet, but Canada hasn't had to do a lot of things yet. So I think Wilson has been a good complement to that Celebrini McDavid line. Against Team USA, he might not be. And you might see them have to shuffle their lines because maybe they don't need that weight. Maybe that game isn't because you can't drop their gloves. Maybe it isn't going to be what it was in Four Nations. Maybe it is going to be a speed skill game. And then I do think you're going to have to shuffle the lines for Team Canada. But I think one thing we talked about, the ability to do that nuclear line, when you put the three fastest players in the tournament on the ice at the same time, USA just has not been tested like that offensively. And you've seen them defend and struggle defending against even Germany at times. And in all their other games at Latvia, when they got started, they struggled out of the gate, 1-1 after one. I don't know if they can handle that all at once. So that's a line that you haven't had to see much because they haven't needed it much. And I do wonder how both of these coaches are going to respond to adversity. They just haven't had enough of it. How do you, as Team USA, go, I'm going to scout Team Canada's defensive zone structure? How do you do it? Like, where are their holes? Because we haven't seen them give up sustained offensive zone time. We haven't seen them give up shots from the slot. So if I'm the Team USA coaching staff, honestly, same staff, same players, I'm going back and I'm doing just Four Nations. And that's where I'm getting my video prepared if they face Canada, because I don't think there's been enough good quality play in the defensive zone for either team to use for video purposes.
That is interesting. Like, again, how do you value and how do you read into those first games on either side? And maybe that does lean something. I know I spent some time before you popped on mapping out, like, okay, can Canada get a super easy path where it's Germany instead of Finland in the maybe if you're Canada, you actually do kind of want a Finland or something in the semifinals to like really push you so that you're not just walking into a gold medal game against USA and being like, oh shit, this is a way different level of hockey than we've been playing for the last 10 days.
Yeah, and what one of the scenarios you brought up is what if Sweden wins? What if Sweden beats the US? And now Sweden's coming off a huge win where if they're going to beat the US, they're going to be rolling. They're going to have good goaltending and they're going to have their offense up to par. And their defense, I think, is solid. I like their ability to move the puck. Now they're playing a Team Canada that's been resting for 2 or 3 days. And now Sweden's coming off a huge win. That's a lot of pressure for Team Canada. A team that hasn't had to face that adversity. So you're right. If I'm Canada, I'm going, hey, give me the Germans right now. Let's get Leon Draisaitl versus McDavid in this game. Team were much better then, and I think we'll have to play better and ramp up, but not like, hey, we're going from preseason games to the Stanley Cup final. And I think that's what they would have to face if they face Sweden in the semi. So yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of watching on these seeds over the next 24 hours because some of these matchups in the semis, it could be real interesting. But to me, the biggest contest coming up is going to be if USA faces Sweden. And I do think that's going to be the best game of this next 2 days.
All right, Petey, appreciate your time. As always, thanks for popping on, and we'll check in with you a little bit later on.
Anytime, guys. See you soon.
Again, inside the coach's room and on his Twitter at @SPetersHockey. I tagged him in the show tweet today if you want to go give a look to some of the breakdowns he's been doing. Excellent ones at that. Huts, you asked, and I got an answer for you for hashtag askdfo. I got the busiest games of your NHL career pulled up in front of me. Probably not a shocker. The 12 busiest games of your career in terms of shot volume, all when you were with the Buffalo Sabres. So there were 10 games in your career where you had to make more than 40 saves plus is what I used as sort of the metric. Your record in those games was 4-3-3. So again, points in 7 of the 10. You were 3-0 though in your 3 busiest games of your career. Is your memory good enough to tell me one of them? 48 saves, 47 saves, 43 saves.
So I do know this, and I hold the franchise record in St. Louis and in Buffalo for most saves in a shutout. So I would assume that one of the 48 one, I think, is St. Louis versus Winnipeg. That's where I got the Hockey Night in Canada towel from. And then another one that I had was in Buffalo, we played in LA, and I stopped 46 or 47 when I was with the Sabres for the franchise record. Because people are always pissed off that Dominic Hasek doesn't have the record and I have it. So suck on that.
I was wrong. You did have, out of the 10, 9 of them are Buffalo. One of them is St. Louis. It's that game, December 16th, 2017. You went a perfect 48 for 48 in a 2-0 win. And then, the other one, it was a 47 save shutout against the LA Kings. It was a 3-0 win for you guys in that one. So those are the busiest ones of your career. So you were onto something. You had some really, really good games when you faced a lot of rubber. One more Ask DFO. Yeah, we got one in here from Wall Kicks in the YouTube chat, who also commented and said they have the day off, which means they can comment on the show. So we appreciate you tuning in. They wanted to know, do you think the Kevin Fiala injury will have any impact on the discussion of future NHL player participation? They added, I'm a Kings fan, and I hope the NHL still sends players. I'll tell you this, I'm sure Kevin Fiala is sitting there saying, yeah, don't let me and my injury be the reason we don't go. I think all the players just know this is a risk, Huts.
Yeah, I think so too. That could have happened anywhere too. It could have happened in practice. It was an innocent play. It wasn't like it was a vicious play or something that stood out. He and Tom Wilson just got tied up, and it was a weird way that they fell. So I do think the NHL understands the risk going into this. There's insurance. They have everything in place. But that being said, it would be hard pressed to find any player that is playing at an elite level to say, no, we don't want to go back. You can see how much fun these guys are having and how much pride they take in it. So hopefully it's here for good. But again, that's the risk that we bear, sending our stars over.
Yeah, our bets for Bet365. Download the app today. Use the promo code NATION. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. On the women's side of things, USA up 5-0 on Sweden right now, so they are rolling that one in the third period. Canada, Switzerland, about 90 minutes away from getting started there. Canada, 4.5 goal favorites over the Swiss on the women's side of the bracket. And then tomorrow, obviously, the qualifying round. You have Germany, France, Switzerland, Italy, Czechia, Denmark, and Sweden, Latvia. The closest spread, at least on the betting front, is actually Czechia, Denmark, which is only a 1.5 goal difference between the two. So again, some kind of big spreads. I'm honestly surprised, Huts. Sweden only being 2.5 goal favorites over Latvia. I actually might take Sweden at that number. I think they're going to shape up here and get their game in order now that the pressure's cranked up a touch.
Yeah, I'd assume that they'll get going too, and they're going to get better as the tournament goes. I think it'll be interesting to see what Sweden puts out in net and how they can perform. And for that line in the Denmark game, I think that's the factor of Freddie Anderson's been pretty good in this tournament, right? So I think he gives them a chance to keep it tight. But there's a lot of storylines. And again, I know we're all waiting for the mega matchups, but these little quarterfinal prelim games, I don't even know what we call these. It's like first round elimination games are exciting. There's a lot of storylines. There's a lot on the line. And for a lot of these countries, even just to make a quarterfinal is unbelievable. So there's a lot of fun going into these games tomorrow.
Who do you start if you're Sweden? I know someone asked us that in the chat. Do you just keep rolling Gustafsson, or do you got to change things up?
I don't know. It's worrisome with what I've seen from Gustafsson too. I'd expect him to be a little busier and maybe a bit better. And I think at this point now, without enough games in and seeing what you got with other guys, I think you just got to ride with Gustafsson.
Yeah, 5 goals on 45 shots for Gustafsson through his 2 appearances in the preliminary round. Let's cruise along and wrap up the show with a little bit of garbage time here. The chat's been talking about it, so we can give our takes. Matt Tkachuk throwing the always the bridesmaid chirp at Leon Draisaitl. He also had another part of his chirp where he told Leon that like your teams lose because of you, which I mean, I don't think is even close to accurate. And I know some people are pearl clutching. How could Matt Tkachuk say this to me? And you know I'm an Oilers guy. If you beat Leon Draisaitl in back-to-back Stanley Cup finals, you can kind of say shit like this, in my opinion.
Yeah, like you can. It's just Kachuk, right? I think too much gets thought into this. He knows the camera's on him. He's just a show pony, right? And he's got the trump card that they won the last 2 Stanley Cups. He's not a better player than Leon Draisaitl. And he knows that. Leon knows he's a better player. This is the gamesmanship of what goes into hockey, right? He's saying this in a setting where USA is a powerhouse. So I don't think too much involved in it. We've seen Kachuk say way worse things, and this is what he does. This is how he acts, how he plays. And if you're a player, it's just water off a duck's back.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think Leon's upset with it. I
No.
don't think any player's sitting there being like, oh, that went too, it wasn't too far. If anything, it's a good chirp, and I think it's nothing more than that. The fact it even became such a conversation is honestly a little surprising to me. But anyways, it's an off day at the Olympics, so we need something to talk about. Tomorrow, 4 games on tap: Germany, France, Switzerland, Italy, Czechia, Denmark, Sweden, Latvia, all looking to punch their tickets to the quarterfinals. But that is a wrap on today's edition of the show. We are back at it tomorrow at noon Eastern. We'll see y'all then. Hey, hockey fans, if you enjoyed that video, then make sure you hit the subscribe button right here on the Daily Faceoff YouTube. We have you covered for everything you need. Exclusive interviews on The Sheet with Jeff Merrick, all the latest hockey news on Daily Faceoff Live, and you can always get your morning started with Johnny Lazarus and Colby Cohn on Morning Cup of Hockey. Don't miss a minute. Hit that subscribe button.